Onwards AOS, onwards AOS. I just can't win a game, but I know that my list should be taking names. Onwards AOS, onwards AOS. My painting may be well on point, but my gaming just makes me disappoint. Onwards AOS, onwards AOS. I just want to make this combo work. Every time I lose, it really hurts. Onwards AOS, onwards AOS. You should try some coaching. Our teachers are the best. Link in description. Consider purchasing a subscription. Okay, so I thought we all needed a bit of a boosting poem on a Monday, and I figure I want some more creative ways to plug my own stuff. Anyway, welcome to this video. My name is Stuart Angerson McCown, and today we are talking about getting ripped with Papa Khorne. Now, what does that mean? Well, we're going to talk about basically this is a unit analysis / tier list video. Okay, I am going to go through the allegiance like super quickly slapdash, so we're all kind of on the same page. And then from there, I of course have tier maker prepared, and we can go in and do some unit analysis. Okay, before I get into the video, please like, subscribe, check out Onwards AOS, all that kind of stuff. Thanks for all the feedback on my last video. It did really well and had some really positive comments. Of course, we had the usual like, my favorite one was like, oh, thank God this is your opinion and not truth. Which I thought was like a very polite way of saying there's some questionable takes in here, but I enjoyed that comment. So thank you all for leaving comments. I encourage you to leave more. It's super fun for me. All right, so today we're talking about Khorne. I've been playing heaps of Khorne lately because when Gits got nerfed, I was like, I think it's time to play something else for a little bit. Although Gits are still great, I think they're great in a not particularly interesting way now, unfortunately, so I'll talk about that soon, but I need some more time to play Gits in order for that video to actually have some foundation in truth. Anyway, today we're going to talk about Khorne. Okay, now Khorne was actually a pretty good book even before this book came out, and it's always been a little bit weird because it's been It's a book that's essentially about barbarian men and red demons hitting things, but it's also one of the highest skill cap books in the game. I don't know why those things have been paired together, but I'm all for it. I super love playing this book, so let's just go quickly into the battle traits and stuff, alright? And then we'll jump into the tier list. So, alright, you get a sub-faction. Now, the big change from last book is that demons now get a 5-up ward if they're more than 8 from all enemy units. And if they retreat, they do lose this for the rest of the game, but if you're retreating with a demon, either the game is like turn 4 or 5 and it doesn't matter anyway, or you are just a coward and shouldn't be playing Khorne. Nah, sometimes there's legitimately situations where you retreat, but I'd say this is a great ability, but of course the more than 8-inch thing is the key part. Okay, now the good part about 8 inches is that we can redeploy it. So let's say if our opponent comes within 8 to try and deny the ward so they can shoot us, you can redeploy, and that way you can guarantee you're still going to have the 5-up ward. But one negative of this ability is the cost of the War Scrolls takes into account that they have a 5-up ward, and so if your opponent can play around it, then you're not getting the maximum efficacy out of, let's say, a unit of Bloodletters, right? So that's the danger here. Now, this sort of is more advantageous to units that can easily stay outside of 8 inches, so mobile units and units with small footprints, i.e. Bloodthirsters, and it's less great for units like Bloodletters, which are very easy to get within 8 of because they are on 32mm bases, and you're taking units of 20 or 30 of them, okay? Bloodbound, we do some mortals when we die. It's really whatever, but it's kind of nice on Bloodreavers to get some chip damage in, but it's definitely not like a key part of the strategy, I don't think. Yep, and then we have a 5-up spell ignore that gives you a Blood Tithe. And the Blood Tithe, this is the most important part of the army. Okay, so basically you get a Blood Tithe, A from the spell ignore, B from killing enemy units or your units dying, or C from a prayer, okay, which gives you 1 Blood Tithe called Blood Sacrifice, which I'll get into in a second. But basically, once at the end used to be start of each hero phase, so you're on your opponent's turn, you can do something with this Blood Tithe chart. Now, I would say most of these past number 4 just bin. It's unfortunate that that's what's happened because it was the same last book, but I mean, +1 to the spell ignore for 5 blood tithe, +1 rend, some mortal wounds for 7 blood tithe, +1 attack until the end of the battle. These are all pretty bad, okay? The best ones are definitely 1 and 4, okay? So, number 1, which is Murderlust, which you're going to be using all the time, is that up to 3 Blades of Khorne units, more than 3 from enemy units, can make a move of d6, and they can finish within 3. Clearly that's broken. That's an insanely strong ability. And it also kind of just boosts the mobility of the army in general, right? Because you know that you can just spend 1 blood tithe, move d6, possibly move something within 3 so your opponent can't redeploy when you do move later in the turn, stuff like that, okay? It really gets around some of the slow units in the army, and it's obviously also a great tool to disrupt your opponent in their turn, because you can do this in their turn too. And then number 4, you pick 1 friendly Blades of Khorne unit within 3 and you fight with them. Of course, that's insane. It always has been insane, and given that this book now has more melee threats, which I'll get into, that are not here, like, you know, not like a Bloodthirster or Skarbrand. You know, we actually have bigger units that do more damage. Then yeah, it's even stronger than it used to be. One fun thing as well is this is at the end of the hero phase. So if you got some hero phase buffing you need to do, you can do that during the hero phase and then hero phase fight, which is super nice. And we can obviously also do this on our opponent's turn, which is also super nice. So yeah, very strong ability for sure. Yep, and then we have like an auto spell ignore, which can be really good. So versus Lumineth, you might like to do this to get rid of the 5-up ward, or some other nasty thing that you don't want to deal with. And then the most fun ability, which I've realized that often it's better to just hero phase fight than do this, but you know what? This is the most satisfying ability in all of Warhammer. So this is what you do is you spend 3 blood tithe and you drop a meteor on somebody's head. Is there nothing greater in Warhammer than saying like a meteor is gonna land right there? And okay, generally speaking, if it's not like a monster or something, it's not amazing. But if you're trying to kill a monster that's got like 5 wounds, you know, 5 wounds left or so, then yeah, it's great. Like Kragnos, you know, just drop a meteor on him, mate. It'll be fine. I love using this thing, but as I said, 1 and 4 are probably the best things here. We have summoning. It's very good. I'll scroll down a little bit so you can see the side, but yeah, basically, the best summoning things are 3 Flesh Hounds or a Bloodmaster, and if you're not doing that, I think you're probably waiting until either 10 Bloodletters or 20 Bloodletters. Tends to be the vibe. Okay, now just talk a little bit about gear, because it does have some bearing on where some units are going to place. Okay, the command traits for demons are all pretty good. In my opinion, the priest one is the best by quite a bit. Yep, the Bloodletter one I've tried and I don't like it. The Unrelenting Hunter one is fun, but generally speaking, your heroes are more synergy based than solo operatives, and it's generally speaking hard to justify a general being a solo operator because you want him to stay alive so you can get command points. Yeah, okay. The mortal command traits are all bin because the priest one is all right, but you don't want to take like a 5 wound priest as your general, even in you can't shoot me meta. No, okay, we're taking a demon general. I think that's pretty clear. Artifacts for demons, again, are all pretty good. The 4-up ward against mortal wounds is less good because we already have the 5-up ward, but the 2 standouts are obviously no wards and strikes first, which are obviously both ridiculous. And then the bloodbound artifacts are all bin. So that's the situation. So basically, all of your gear is going on your demons, which means you're probably going to take multiple demon heroes. Keep that in mind, okay? And if, say, units are, all else but equal, a hero is a demon versus being a mortal, the demon version will be better because A, it has a 5-up ward, and then B, it has better access to gear. Okay, so just keep that in mind when we're going through the units. Okay, the prayers. Why do we need to look at the prayers? Well, because these are great. And what that means is that if something has the priest keyword, it's better than something that doesn't, for the most part. Okay, so Blood Sacrifice, you get a Blood Tithe for taking some mortal wounds. This one, you get to take your 5-up ward for the demons, and then of course they're bravery 10, so you can just recover it back, so super easy to just have no cost for this. Bloodbind is amazing. You pick an enemy within 16, and then your opponent has to move 8 inches with it, and they can finish within 3 inches of units in your army, which is crazy. So what you can do is bloodbind something into combat and then hero phase fight it, which I've done a couple times, and ever since I've done that, I've felt like a god. Bronze Flesh, you give something +1 save, nice. These are all 3s. Blood Sacrifice is a 4. Killer Instinct, you move something in the hero phase, nice. On a 3 again. Unholy Flames, +1 rend, this is good, but it's on a 4, so it's less good than the other ones, basically. So I think in general, you take the first 4 before you take the +1 rend. That's been my way of looking at it, because, okay, Blood Sacrifice, you need this to get Murderlust stacking, and then the other 3 are on a 3, so I tend to take Blood Sacrifice and the 2 movement-related ones, so Bloodbind and Killer Instinct, before I take anything else. And then Witchbane Curse, I don't like this one. Subtract 1 for casting, and then if they don't cast a spell, they take D3 mortal wounds. I don't think you're ever really taking this unless you're taking a prayer enhancement. Okay, and then we have the Slaughterhosts, which are the sub-factions, right? Of these, 5 are legitimately good, and 1 is completely terrible. The one that's terrible is the Baleful Lords, okay, where you use the top damage table. And the reason that that's bad is because other than the Bloomthirster, none of the Bloodthirsters really bracket that hard. So if you're going a Bloodthirster heavy build, you take Reapers of Vengeance every time, which gives you +1 to hit when your demons target a hero. And the more important thing is, each time an enemy hero is slain, you receive 1 additional Blood Tithe point. So you don't actually have to slay the hero yourself, but anyway, in any case where a hero dies on the board, you're going to get 2 Blood Tithe instead of 1. So, very handy. Gore Tide, you get +1 to wound with melee attacks from your mortal dudes, the target enemy unit that's contesting objective you don't control, or the target enemy unit wholly within enemy territory. It's good, but it's a bit kind of finicky with the way that this works, but generally speaking, if you're if you're being given the first turn, this is not as great because you're going to have the objectives, but if you're taking second turn, then, this is a little bit better. But I think in general, it's not my favorite available to the mortals. Bloodlords make your Bloodletters do mortal wounds on 5s when they charge. I'm more of a fan of, even with quite a few Bloodletters, still taking Reapers of Vengeance, but this is definitely good. Because it just means if you turn wards off, you're just doing 5-up, just do wounds to stuff. Because, you ignore the save and then ignore the ward save. So if you have, 20 Bloodletters with 3 attacks each or something, you're going to be just doing 20 damage to something regardless. So, that's just going to one-hit Kragnos or something. So Bloodlords, tremendous threat there because of this. But I think overall I still prefer just having more Blood Tithe. Skullfiend Tribe, if you roll an 8+, which is super easy if you take a 3d6 charge Bloodthirster, then the strike first unit applies to that mortal unit. Pretty good, but there are other ways of getting strikes first, and overall on your opponent's turn this doesn't do anything, so that's the weakness of this ability. It's the same with Bloodlords, right? Flayed, basically you get a 5-up ward if you've been picked to fight in the same phase. It's quite good because there are ways to get strike first and stuff, and I think it just, you're going to be fighting in multiple places as Khorne, so being able to get 5-up ward in the spot where your opponent doesn't fight is quite good. And obviously this can work on your opponent's turn, as opposed to the other faction, Skullfiend Tribe, which doesn't do anything. So yeah, that's the allegiance abilities. So you can see obviously they're really strong. So let's get into some thoughts about the units in the book. Okay, so what's going to be my criteria for doing this? Well, first of all, let's look at the tiers. Okay, so we have the GOAT tier, and then we have S, A, B, C, and F. Okay, now the reason I don't have a D tier and I went all the way down to F is because realistically anything that's in D tier in a book, I feel like you're just never going to take it under any circumstance. I think C tier you can probably justify as like a pet unit, or like if it's cheap enough, and in this book at least it's giving you like a blood tithe. Maybe it does something else, right? But F tier is just like, don't take this under any circumstances. Yeah. So, okay, let's go through it. What I'm gonna do is I'm basically going to be operating under the assumption that we're in this GHB. Okay. I will do this again when the new GHB comes out, because my thoughts will be very different with this book when the new GHB comes out. Because there are a lot of heroes in this book, which, if they're not protected, and if they're not, helping you score battle tactics and stuff, will be completely awful. But now they're not so bad. Okay. I'm giving extra bonus points to units which I feel like maybe are a little bit underused in a way. Well, not necessarily bonus points, but I'm trying. Yeah, in this video, I'm going to be trying to talk about those units, okay? Because obviously Bloodletters are a point of focus at the moment with this army, but I don't think necessarily that needs to be the whole army. Okay, so let's talk about Mr. Bloodstoker first. All right, so what does the Bloodstoker do? Well, he gives D3 units within 3 of them at the start of the movement phase run and charge, but it can't be himself. If it could be himself, I would be more of a fan, because that means that he could keep up with stuff. But as of now, you're kind of required to like murder lust him in range, or hero phase move him in range. And that's not really what you want to be doing with a 90-point hero, right? It kind of makes him high economy in a way that I don't like. And the other problem with him is that, well, for some reason, he has 1 less wound than the other heroes. That's number A. And the second thing is, it's not really clear, like, how useful that run and charge is, because often with the mortal units, you're not actually charging that often, and if you are, you have plenty of other ways to get in range to charge. What you would much rather is just some ability to just give more movement, so you can like screen, like you can push out your screens further, but running and charging your screens just doesn't really do much, does it? So I think I'm happy to put this guy in the C tier. I've played with him a few times, but I'm not necessarily convinced. He doesn't really work as a solo operator as well as the other guys, the other small heroes, because he's less tanky and his output's less as well, so I'd put him down there. Okay, Mighty Skullcrushers. They have a 2-up save, but otherwise, they're quite expensive. Like, if we just look at their War Scroll real quick over here, you can see that, okay, first of all, they're 15 wins for a 2-up save for 200 points, which is pretty good, all things considered. But the damage is not there, is it? If we're honest with ourselves, like, okay, on the charge, okay, we're probably going to get, I mean, how many mortal wounds is that? I don't know, like 8 or something. I can't do the math that quickly, but you're doing like a decent amount of mortal wounds on the charge, but you're only 8-inch move, and you take up an enormous amount of space, so there's always a danger of getting tagged. So I would never take 6 of these. I quite like the idea of taking 3, though, as a mobile anvil. The real competition for Mighty Skullcrushers is just taking 10 Blood Warriors, because 8-inch move is not actually that fast, and sometimes you'd rather have 20 wounds than 15 wounds. So I'm not so hot on this unit. I would put it in something like B tier, okay? They're better than the demon version of themselves, but I think they still have the same problem of doing almost nothing in combat after they charged. Okay, Bloodletters. This isn't going to surprise you that I'm going to put them in S tier. These are very good. Now, I don't think it's the be-all and end-all of the book, and I'd probably put them to like the lower end of S tier, because they do have some problems. So the first problem is all their regen mechanics are based on being in your own hero phase. And what does that mean? Well, if you lose a key pro, it's going to hurt like a motherfucker. That's what that means. If any of you have played Feck before, that's exactly how it feels, right? It's like, okay, my opponent's going to hit me, and I have 1 Crypt Horror left. If I get the turn, I'm going to get all 9 back, or back to 9, 8 back. And if I don't, I'm going to lose this unit and lose the game. And Bloodletters have that to a lesser extent, okay? So the main recovery mechanic, I would say, is off the Blood Throne, with the D6 dudes coming back. Rally to a lesser extent. And if you do take the command trait for the Bloodletters coming back as well, which I don't recommend, yeah, I would say that yeah, overall the regen is high, but it happens only in your hero phase. The other problem that they have is getting tagged, because if you take Bloodlords, you're kind of banking on getting the charge off. If you don't, it can be difficult to put out as much damage as you would like. So, a great unit. Probably the highest damage potential with Bloodlords and like giving them Wrathmongers and +1 attack. But I prefer another damage unit in the book, which I'll get to soon. Okay, Aspiring Deathbringer. For those who don't know, this unit has no rules, but it's 6 wounds with a 3-up save and it's 80 points for a GC. Does that make it good? Yeah, it makes it good. And the reason is because with this army, my general thoughts is if you don't have 6 heroes, then you should drop something and take another hero. And this is not a terrible candidate if you've only got 80 points. I can't put it anything higher than B tier, and I would put it below Skullcrushers. But I'm not saying that this is a bad unit, because it's better than the Bloodstoker, because what you do with this guy is you just Tunnel Master him, and he can just fight on his own. Tunnel Master him, maybe chuck Bronze Flesh on him, chuck him in cover. He could be on a 1-up save. You could give him Finest Hour and all that defense and be on a -1 save. And just be really annoying on an objective. And for 80 points, that's pretty good. Okay, Dromm and his dudes. Okay, this is not the GHB for this unit. Okay, so this ends up in C tier, below the Bloodstoker. This is quite a good war scroll, but the problem is that a unique priest that costs about the same, effectively, as other priests is just not good at the moment, because it's not a GC. So, yeah. Okay, Exalted Deathbringer. I'd put this probably top of C. This one is worse than the Aspiring Deathbringer because it's not very tanky. It has some D3 mortal wounds reflection thing, but I wouldn't say you care about that so much. It's not going to happen enough. And the damage in combat is more or less the same as the Aspiring Deathbringer, but you don't have a 3-up save. You get a 5-up ward, but the problem with a 5-up ward and a 5-up save is the sort of things that this guy's going to be fighting are like, just garbage, like clan rats and stuff, right? And against that, you'd much rather just have a 2-up save, because they don't have any red. Whereas a 5-up save into a 5-up ward is just like a bit swingy, I think. So I'd put this dude down here. I think he's a little bit worse than the Aspiring Deathbringer, and he's also 10 points more expensive. Now, I don't know why the Aspiring Deathbringer is trying to be the Exalted Deathbringer. So clearly, this guy's just going to the gym, and, the more ripped you get, your armor doesn't quite fit anymore, and you've got to take it off. And when it happens, you lose your 3-up save, but you're so mad that you get a 5-up ward. But I think, unfortunately, his more sweet 3-up save version of his personality was better. And so I would say the Aspiring Deathbringer is better. Okay, Scyla, the little angry spawn man, has an 8-inch pile-in. And I would just like to direct you to the problem with this war scroll. Okay. Which is the output. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, the problem is that this profile just doesn't do, any damage. It's just so swingy and unreliable. And he doesn't have a ward save, and it's 8 wounds with a 5-up save, and is unique. So unfortunately, I think this is our first F. I would never take this unit under any circumstance at all. The 8-inch pile-in is fun, but the output is so bad that I think he really just does absolutely nothing. And that's a shame. Okay, the Bloodthirster. He's in B tier because he's a Bloodthirster. B for boom. I think it's not as bad as you would think, but I think if you're the type of person who's going to take a Bloodthirster, you probably will take him. But I'm not the kind of person who likes banking on basically the 50% chance that you have to roll the boom. If you do roll the boom, he becomes mega worth it, but otherwise his damage is actually the same as the other Bloodthirsters without having any utility. If you are going to take this one, I would recommend taking the strikes first, and then taking another Bloodthirster with the ignoring wards thing, I think is the way to do it. Unless you're taking a Wrath of Khorne one, then you could do Wrath of Khorne with strikes first and this one with no wards and have them as a little death squad. But in general, as I was saying before, with Khorne, you want your heroes to be utility based. If you are going to have a beat stick, I would say that you kind of want it to be a little bit more of a solo operator, because often what you're trying to do with Khorne is buff up a unit of Bloodletters or Skullreapers or something, and that's being your main threat. So if they're a hero, you want them to be a little bit more self-sufficient than a Bloodthirster, which kind of requires, I would say, a little bit of setup with like blood binding stuff in range, and making sure that you give him +1 to hit. I'm less so a fan of this unit than perhaps other people, but honestly, it's not bad though. It's just, I think, kind of mid for me. Okay, Flesh Hounds, I'm not a fan of. That's going to kind of surprise people. I think people were looking at this unit and saying that it was good, but the problem with Flesh Hounds is if you compare them to something like Direwolves. Okay, so Direwolves, I think, are like, they used to be 135 or something anyway, but now I don't know what they are now, but Flesh Hounds are only 10 wounds and a 5-up save for 100 points. Yes, they can have a ward, but basically they have almost no value other than that. They're not even particularly fast. They only move 8. And so, yeah, what that means is it's quite difficult for me to justify taking them. If they don't really have any durability advantage or damage advantage or really speed advantage over Bloodreavers, and they're 20 points more expensive, I'm not entirely sure the point of taking them. The best thing that they do, I think, is just the unbind, but I'm not necessarily going to pay 20 points for that, I think. Okay, Garrek's Reavers. This is an A tier unit. It's 70 points for a 10 wound screen, which is the cheapest access to that in the book. And it just fills out lists quite nicely. You'll often find yourself having 70 or 80 points, and this is better than 10 Bloodreavers every time. Now, what makes this unit quite good is you can set up a situation where you can address one of the army's key weaknesses, which is like, okay, if we move up 10 Blood Warriors as like an amble or like a screen, or 3 Skullcrushers, the danger that it has is your opponent just tags you with something and then you're stuck there the whole game. What Garrek's Reaver says is, okay, if you're going to tag me with a screen, I'm going to farm Blood Tithe for like 3 turns. And when that happens, you're gonna say, okay, your 1 Blood Tithe has just given me like 3 or 4 Blood Tithe, and that can be like a win condition, and for 70 points, that's great. An absolute worst case scenario, they can be a 70-point unit that dies and gives you a Blood Tithe. I really like Garrek's Reavers. I wouldn't say it's like the sexiest unit by any means, but definitely really strong. Okay, Magore's Fiends, I would also put in the A tier. This is kind of a different sort of unit. So what they have is, they're 3 dudes with 3 wounds and a 3-up save that reflect mortals on 6s in the same way the Blood Warriors do, and do double murder rolls. But yeah, the difference between them and Blood Warriors is they have 3 wounds instead of 2, but of course there's only 3 of them. But actually, the champion, the Magore, actually has pretty good output. And you get 2 units, basically. So you get the 3 dudes, and you summon another Hound. And the Hound does not have to be set up during in your territory. So in a way, it's kind of a 3-inch pregame move with the Hound. And with the Hound, you can get kind of the cheapest little Murderlust unit to send in, right? You just deploy the Hound, you can hero phase move it, and then just run it forward. So basically you can go like 22 inches or something, and then just move d6 into your opponent and just be annoying with your 1 Hound. If you like also, you can blood sacrifice at turn 1 and try to kill it, and that way you get 2 Blood Tithe. But either way, 120 points for basically 2 units, and one of them being really quite a good skirmishing melee unit, and the other one being a good like missile is nice. What prevents them from being higher is that 120 points is extremely awkward to fit in a list, as I've discovered. It's like, if they're like 110 or 100, and like with 1 wound less, so maybe they maybe be better, but 120 is just awkward, for sure. Okay, Karanak. So it's a hero that's not a leader, and its abilities are all fairly irrelevant. But the one trick it has is that it can summon Flesh Hounds into combat. How great is that? The answer is not particularly great. 3 Blood Tithe is a lot for a trick that I think in most cases is not going to do that much. And you've already spent 140 points on Karanak as well. It really doesn't serve much other purpose. I don't know if I can I don't know if I can put it in C tier, because the other units in C tier at least perform kind of a role. It's just they perform it worse than something else. I'm not sure what this guy's role is going to be. So I think for me, it has to be a bit of an F tier unit. I really can't see myself taking him for his points, unfortunately. Okay, we have a Khorgorath. This thing is also terrible, but I would say it's better than these two things because, okay, it has no role, but if for some reason you are have a pet Khorgorath, like you painted this Khorgorath really nice, perhaps you want to run Skarr Bloodborne, then I could maybe see an argument for taking one of them, because it's 110 points for 8 wounds and a 4-up save that does okay damage in combat, and has some, like, inspiring presence turning off thing. Is that good? No, not really, but it's not necessarily going to ruin your army by taking one of them, okay? So, that's my position on Khorgorath. Yes, it is a bad unit, but I don't think you're necessarily going to ruin your army by taking it. Yeah, the tricky thing with, like, Scyla compared to this, because they are kind of similar in a way, what makes Scyla worse is it takes up a hero slot, which you really just don't want to do with this army, so, yeah. I know Karanak doesn't either, but he also just doesn't really do anything, so that's why he's there. Okay, now, I have a bit of a difficulty here, which is that the Mighty Lord of Khorne and Khorgos Khul have basically the same image, like it's the same war scroll. So the slightly larger one is Khorgos Khul, because he's more of a Giga Chad, and the smaller one is the other guy, the Mighty Lord of Khorne. So, Khorgos Khul, okay, leader of the Gore Tide, and with the reality splitting axe and the ridiculous 8-inch pylon. Okay, so again, it's not his GHB, because while the other heroes in the book, including his non-unique version, get protection, he's stuck there with 7 wounds on a 3-up save with no ward, which ultimately makes it so I can't place him higher than, let's say, the top of C tier, unfortunately. Yeah. I would love to put him higher, but it's just the durability that's the problem. Everything else about him I actually think is pretty good. Like, his once per game extra murder roll thing can be pretty good in the right situation. If you're just getting absolutely just fisted all across the board, then that can be a really good way of just putting some damage back. Yeah, the other thing he does is actually put out some pretty serious hurt. He can't hero phase fight in the way that other heroes can, which is a bit disappointing, but you can give him like +1 Ren with the Skullrinder and have like 6 attacks with Ren 3 damage too. Pretty nice. But yeah, I don't think it's higher than C tier for me. Okay, the Skullmaster. Clearly the model that they don't want you to buy, because this thing is awful. Alright, let's talk about it. Okay, let's go look at the Skullmaster. Alright, so what does this thing do? Well, it's pretty awful in combat. And it does some mortal wounds when it charges, this is pretty decent, to be honest. 3 mortal wounds. And it gets once per game reroll charges to Bloodcrushers. I know you guys can't see that, but that's what that does. Yeah, that's all it does. I believe he also makes Bloodcrushers battle line by making him the general. He's, for some reason, the only version of this war scroll of the Khorne Heralds that's not a priest. And that makes him awful, and I could never see myself taking him under any circumstance, so that's why he's there. The Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut doesn't really do that much in the same way that the Skullmaster does, but at least he's got a 2-up save. And that makes him pretty tasty in a way. But again, I just don't like this idea of having a hero that doesn't like really do that much damage and doesn't have any synergy and is not a GC. Like, if you're not going to have any synergy and I can use you as a solo operator, the conditions are as follows. 1, you have to be a Galatian champion. And then 2, okay, you have to like not be the general. And the only reason you'd take a Skullmaster or Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut is to make the Skullcrushers or Bloodcrushers battle line. And that kind of makes this unit more difficult to use, because they're not like a solo operator anymore. So for me, this Lord of Khorne guy, it goes like here. I wouldn't say it's as bad as the Skullmaster, but still pretty bleh. Okay, the Blood Throne. Okay, so not a GC, because it has a mount. It has a demon bike with a little mouth at the front and some dudes. But it has the all-important bringing back D6 Bloodletters thing. Now, it's only 160 points and does like pretty decent damage in combat and also heals when it kills stuff. So they've clearly factored into the point cost that it's not a GC. Now, like, if you compare this to the Skullmaster, it's like, why is this only 30 points more than the Skullmaster when, aside from the mortal wounds and the charge, it's literally better in every way possible? I don't know. But I would put this, I would say, above the Bloodthirster in B. Yeah, like, I don't think I can say it's A, because I can see some people not taking it with Bloodletters. Maybe it could be bottom of A. I think we can make a bottom of A, somewhere in between A and B. Somewhere there, okay? I think at the end of the day, having more priests is, of course, nice. So this guy being a priest is nice. The big negative is if you take him and 2 Bloodthirsters, then you're not getting, two, like, double warlord or something, right? That's a negative, so just got to be careful about that kind of thing. But otherwise, I think pretty solid. Alright, Bloodreavers are actually just good. I'm going to put them at top of B. B for Bloodreavers. This is just a good-ass 80-point battle line unit. Do they particularly do anything? No, but they give you a blood tithe, and they do some damage in the process. And that's kind of what you want from battle line in this army. So I'm a big fan of taking just, 2 or 3 units of Bloodreavers in basically every army, even in Bloodletter armies, because you need cheap screens, and they can sort of do damage against other crap in a way that makes them more functional than, like Hobgrots, for example. Yeah, so I quite like Bloodreavers. Okay, the Realmgore Ritualist. Who would have thought that the new model would be amazing? It's the best mortal priest, okay? Because the prayer for -1 attack is obviously like pretty good, but what makes it great is the once per game +1 to hit aura that she can do at the end of the movement phase, which if you put it on a massive terrain feature like there might be at Worlds, is just great. The reason the +1 hit is really good is because with these sorts of mortal armies, you find yourself fighting in the hero phase a lot. You can fight in the hero phase with heroes, fight in the hero phase with units, so having that +1 to hit in the hero phase is really nice. And then other than that, it's just a really like good ability on the cheapest priest in the book, which is 100 points, right? Super solid. Okay, Valkia is not bad. Again, not her GHB. And the +3 bravery thing could be pretty nice in a couple matchups, but the no retreat thing is really bad because she can't retreat and she's a unit that kind of wants to sometimes. So I don't like the no retreat thing. Other than that, she's 6 wounds with a 3-up save with a 5-up ward and is pretty decent in combat. And she can start off the board, which is really nice, and do some mortal wounds when she drops down. I don't think you could put Valkia any higher than the bottom of B, but like a pretty decent unit. Okay, the Bloodmaster. Oh my gosh. Alright, I don't know if they conspired to get the Bloodmaster out of the warehouse or something, but this unit was so bad in the old book. And now it's the best hero, the best foot hero, right? Basically, it's 6 wounds with a 4-up save, with a 5-up ward, with the best combat profile of all the heroes. He's also a priest, he's only 110 points, and he can chain activate with Bloodletters or himself, and the way that his rule is worded, they don't have to be within 3. So what you can do is have 6 Bloodmasters, one of them with strikes first, and then have a big unit of Bloodletters, and what you can do is just charge 1 Bloodmaster in, everything else is outside of 3 of stuff, okay, and you just go, alright, I'm going to strike first, and just go with all of them. And if you run that sort of build, you can do stuff like your opponent is just fighting 1 Bloodmaster, you go with the Bloodmaster, and you chain activate with all of them. And, that's not going to happen super often, right? But it's one of those things where, you've only spent 110 points, and you're perfectly okay with this guy just being a priest for 110 points. But the fact that he can do other stuff, like he can fight, he can do this chain activating thing, he's the most durable priest. Just makes him auto-include in every build. Even in mortal builds, you're still going to take at least one of these guys, right? One of the Bloodmasters. So that makes him, being auto-include just makes you in the goated tier, okay? So, yeah, I'm really a big fan of the Bloodmaster. Okay, the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster. All right, I think that this one for me is quite clearly in the C tier. I'm really not a fan of this unit at all. Okay, the fact that you can strike first and bring another Bloodthirster in combat is great. If he just did a bit more damage, like his damage is just pretty disappointing. I'm just not really a fan for 330 points. I have to admit I've only played one game with him, and I didn't hate him in that game. I just feel like for 330 points, what he brings, which is the chain activating for Bloodthirsters, and the free command point, I'm not sure that that's worth 330 points. So I think for me it's a bit of a miss for this one compared to the other Bloodthirsters. So I put him in C tier. Okay, Wrathmongers. +1 attack aura, pretty good in combat, reflect mortal wounds on ones to hit. 140 points. This is a good ass unit. I'm happy to put it like lower A, above the Blood Throne. I don't think it's better than the 2 warbands, but I think pretty good. If I was looking at taking Wrathmongers, I'd say it depends on what you're running, if it's like going to be super beneficial to run them or not. I don't find running them with Skull Reapers to be that beneficial because Skull Reapers have 4 attacks, and so the +1 attack synergy is less beneficial. But with Bloodletters, man, you want to run 1 squad of these, because taking 20 Bloodletters from 2 attacks each to 3 attacks each, potentially 4 with the Bloodsecrator, is really some massive damage. So, and ultimately what it means with the Bloodletters, if you have the Wrathmongers, is even if your opponent like hits you pretty hard, as long as you've got like 10 to 15 Bloodletters, that's going to be enough to kill something. That's going to be enough to kill something like decently tanky, as long as you've got the attack buffs. So yeah, I think Wrathmongers are pretty solid. Okay, Slaughterpriest. I find this one really hard to take because if I'm looking at other priests, we have the Bloodmaster, who's amazing, and we have the Ritualist, who are also amazing, and that's the demons and mortals covered. So I think the Slaughterpriest for me is just down in C tier, because I can't see myself really ever taking one. Having an Unbind is nice, but other than that, like, I don't see the benefit of taking one over just taking another Ritualist, because a Ritualist, you could set up if you've got one already, you could set up another +1 to hit aura, and that means you could fight in 2 sets of the board. Blood Boil's nice for the D6 mortals, but I think in general, like, I think the +1 attack is more or less equitable with that. So, and the 10 points does actually matter in this sort of army. So I would say that the Slaughterpriest is down here, because I can't see the comparison with the Ritualist. Okay, the Bloodsecrator somehow was an auto-include unit, and is still an auto-include unit. I'm going to put this one here. It's not quite goated, because some games, if your opponent's not hitting you and you're not getting the rally up, it doesn't feel like super amazing. But the once per game +1 attack for everything on the board is just awesome, man. It's so good. Even if you're running as I was saying, Skull Reapers, it's one thing to be investing 140 points to just give, like, basically one thing +1 attack, but 110 points for giving the whole board +1 attack, and also being a GC, and also giving out 4 rally, is just so worth it. And on top of that, he's pretty tanky with 6 wounds with a 3-up save, and he's alright in combat, so I think a really solid unit, and absolutely deserving of the S tier. Okay, and then we got Skarbrand. Skarbrand on his worldwide tour, and this is still the best war scroll in the book. Okay, so why is it the best war scroll in the book? So it's changed a bit, because it used to be you would build your army around Skarbrand. You'd take the Bloodsecrator, you'd take the Wrathmongers, you'd take the 6-inch pile-in Bloodthirster, you'd go Reapers of Vengeance for the double pile-in, you go all the screens to make sure he can get into combat, and then he would absolutely blast. Whereas now, you're spending 380 points on a unit that will pump stuff that does not need any help at all. He's just working the 9 to 5 job. He's just plugging away. He just rocks up on time every day, goes home, his work's done every time. That's Skarbrand, alright? Skarbrand is your solid, independent operator. You can play around him heaps, make sure he gets to the right unit, or you can send him off on solo missions, and he'll do just fine. He's a great recipient of hero phase fighting. He's a great recipient of +1 rend. You can buff him up to the wazoo and send him in, or give him no buffs, and he's still going to have the 3 to 6 charge and be great. So for me, this guy's in all my lists automatically. I think this is a great unit. Okay, Claws of Karanak. I'm going to put towards the bottom of B. Okay. Now, I do like the pre-game move, okay, but 20 points in this army means a lot. And if your pre-game move unit's just going to immediately die, I'm not sure how useful it is. If we're playing against something like KO, to a certain extent, it doesn't necessarily matter what they shoot. The situation is going to be more or less the same. And unless you're taking 2 or 3 units of these pre-game move guys, you're not going to prevent them from getting in range of at least, one layer of important stuff. So I would say that I'm not really looking to put this unit in my list. I thought about it for a while, but I think armies like KO, where we're kind of having a bad time anyway, and I'm not sure that building yourself into your bad matchups is necessarily as good in principle as making sure that you absolutely win the games that you're supposed to win. So I'm more of a fan in general of army building, of like having a strategy, having an identity as an army, and going more into that rather than just trying to shore up my weaknesses in a certain way. Because, okay, I could tech my army into KO. Well, what if I go to a tournament and I just don't play KO the whole weekend? And instead of just going 10 Bloodreavers, I've wasted 20 points on this unit that didn't really do anything else. Because they take up less space than Bloodreavers. They do less murder rolls, so I'm less of a fan, to be honest. Okay, and then we have my ultimate pet unit, which is the Skullgrinder. This unit sucks, but I... Oh my gosh, I love him though. This model is so great. I love it. This is like everything that's great about Khorne is this model, but +1 ran to another unit's like kind of whatever. Now, again, it's a GC that costs 90 points. Like, how bad can it be? The answer is, I'd say this guy is better than the Exalted Deathbringer and probably lower than Khorgos Khul. It's like somewhere here. Like, it's honestly not that bad. I'm not really seeing necessarily how it's going to be taken over a Slaughterpriest or an Aspiring Deathbringer, but anyway. Okay, Bloodcrushers. Okay, now the question is for me, if I put these guys in C or F. Because let's quickly just review the War Scroll. I saw this unit fail to kill like 20 clan rats over like 6 rounds of combat the other day, so my opinion of them has rather soured. Okay, what's the problem here? Well, it's error 404, damage not found, because you only have 3 models, so you have 6 attacks with Hellblade, so that's 3 Bloodletters. Now, 10 Bloodletters is 180 points, so you have like 1/3 of the damage, because the Hooves, like 3 attacks, 3 threes, no rend, 1 damage. It's really not like anything. The charge models are okay. Compared to Bloodcrushers, I think the wards kind of cancel each other out, but you're not a 2-up save. And I didn't like Mighty Skullcrushers anyway. Alright, I'll be nice, and we'll put them... I think they're better than the Skullgrinder and the Deathbringer, so we can put them here, okay? Yeah, but are they better than Flesh Hounds? I think probably. I think this is a fair point for the Bloodcrushers. Okay, Skarr Bloodwrath. 100-point dude that comes back when he dies, and it's just annoying. He's good. I wouldn't put him higher than here, though. Probably here. Yeah, somewhere there. Again, not as GHB. Next GHB, he's going to float up, I think, to S tier. You'll take him in every army. But for now, you want your slots to be either monsters or galley champs for the most part. So that he's there. Okay, the Skull Cannon gives you some ranged output, and it's actually like pretty handy. I saw someone just went 5-0 taking 2 of them. I don't hate this unit. I don't think it's a pet unit to say that it's good either. Because sometimes you just need to chip some damage off to get yourself some blood tithe. It's nice to be able to clear screens. Often with Khorne as well, you have kind of a castle set up, so having something that can shoot at range is kind of free damage, even though it's not amazing damage. I think this is a B tier unit. I put this probably same sort of area as the Bloodthirster for me, somewhere there. Okay, Skull Reapers, I think are great. I think they're really good. I don't think for me the Bloodletters are better than Skull Reapers. The thing about Skull Reapers that makes them better in a way than Bloodletters is the regen can happen in both players' turns because you can take you can use the Bloodsecrator's rally in your opponent's turn. B, in a certain way, they need less buffs. Like, you don't need to take a sub-faction to make Skull Reapers good, so you could take Reapers of Vengeance and then be perfectly fine. They have access to ASF in a way that Bloodletters don't. Bloodletters can get it from Strikes First, but from Halo of Blood on like a Bloodmaster and then chain activating into the Bloodletters, but I think in general you want your Halo of Blood to be on a Bloodthirster. These are kind of like a more low economy threat in a way than the Bloodletters. They also don't need as many +1 attack buffs in the way that Bloodletters do to do damage. So I'm a real big fan of Skull Reapers. I always run them now. I thought they were a joke when I first saw them because the old book, they were actually so much better. And they've actually got nerfed and are still good. So that's kind of a puzzle for me. But it's important that you kind of, when we change books, it is important to look at the old one kind of as just its own book. And then when we get the new book, kind of evaluate things on its own. Because if we just get stuck in where things were, we can kind of miss stuff, I think. Okay, Mighty Lord of Khorne is also bad, but this is my favorite pet unit. I'm going to put him about... I think I can justify putting the Mighty Lord of Khorne at the bottom of B, because I think it does something better than a Slaughterpriest in a way. So, the Mighty Lord of Khorne gives Strikes First to a blood. Everything's blood in Khorne, though, isn't it? My hood is blood. Khorne is blood. It's all blood. No, Gorechosen. You give Strikes First to a Gorechosen. So what can you do? You can give Strike First to a Gorechosen, and it can fight. And then if you're inflayed, it can get a 5-up ward. So there's some nice synergy between this and the Aspiring Deathbringer, right? Where I have the Aspiring Deathbringer, a little bit save stacked. I fight with it, do some damage, it gets a 5-up ward. Really unlikely to die at an objective. Perhaps it can be in Sworn Bodyguard as well. Bring a unit in, they can fight, they get a 5-up ward. The Mighty Lord of Khorne is also great in combat, and you can hero phase fight with it. So you could also just use it as like a slightly more expensive solo operator that does more damage, is more tanky, and it's also got an unbind, which is nice. So I really like the Mighty Lord of Khorne, but I accept that it is partially a pet unit. Skulltaker is quite strong in the sense that it has a 4-up ward, and it's pretty good in combat, but again, it's just not as GHB for these sorts of unique units. It used to be not unique, but it is no longer a Skulltaker, it is the Skulltaker, so that puts it in Khorgos territory for me, down here. Okay, the Riptooth is top of S. I don't think this thing is quite goated because the damage is pure grim, but 3-6 charge, -1 to hit aura, does mortal wounds. The great thing you can do is be a priest. You can give it Strikes First, so even though the damage is not great, you know you're just going to get to fight in your turn all the time. If your opponent charges it, you get to fight first. It just becomes like kind of a low econ combat unit that does great synergy. It's perfect for me. I am a big fan of the Whipthirster. I think all of us Johnny inclined people really don't like this sort of unit because it's a Bloodthirster, but I played so many games without it and with it, and I think I decided that you just have to run it, unfortunately. Yeah, these 3 units at the top, Skarbrand, Bloodmaster, and Whipthirster, are in my opinion a little bit of a step above the others. The reason I didn't put the Whipthirster higher than this is you do need to invest something in it, right? You do need to invest a command trait at an artifact to really make it worth it. And you could put you could put all that stuff on a Boomthirster and also have a combat threat, just so it would be less synergistic. But I think this unit's really good. Blood Warriors as well, I'm going to put up in S tier, probably above the Ritualist, but below this, the Bloodsecrator. This is a really good unit. I would not take 30. I would still just take 10 as like your little anvil unit. Like for 190 points that rallies back, so 20 wounds on a 3-up save. It's just amazing for what it does, man. It's so good. Give the champion the Gorglaive as well, and you actually have something that can do a little bit of damage. Put it near the Ritualist aura. If you're in Gore Tide, it'll be 3 attacks, 2s and 2s, -2 damage, which is like pretty good, right? For a unit that's not supposed to do any damage. I'm really a big fan. Okay, and then we're into the invocations. It's really, really hard for me to judge these. I'm just going to take a punt, okay? Because I played with all three of them. I think for me, Skulls is in, like, the top of C tier. Wrathx is, like, somewhere in B tier. And the Icon is somewhere in A tier. Something like that for me. I don't think they're necessarily auto-include. I'd probably take one. But, like, for me, that's the order, right? You're taking Icon before you're taking Wrathx, before you're taking Skulls, for me. Skulls is just too dependent on the matchup. I feel like Icon is also dependent on the matchup, but in the matchup that it is going to matter, it's going to be hugely impactful, and it's only 40 points. Wrathx is also dependent on the matchup, because if they have heroes that have ward saves or heal really easily, it's less useful. But then you play against someone like Orcs, who just has, like, kind of fairly immobile heroes that you can just chase around with this thing the whole game. It's, like, super annoying to play against. Guess we can put it like here. Yeah. So that's my Khorne video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. My voice is dying a little bit. Anyway, please subscribe. Check out Onwards AOS and leave a like and a comment. I'll try to get through the comments this time more than I did last time as well. All right. I'll see you next time. See you later.